Hello everyone, this video is going to be about installing Windows 98 and DOSBox Pure Unleashed. So let's get started. What you're gonna need is, first you'll need um, CD images of Windows 98. Here I have a Windows 98 ISO and also Windows 98 boot disk, a floppy boot disk image here. I'm gonna boot off the floppy disk image, which will load the ISO file. And you also might want to download the Voodoo 3 drivers, the Voodoo drivers. I forgot which version of the Voodoo is it, but we'll see right now. The regular Voodoo. So you're gonna need these Voodoo 3D effects drivers. And the DOSBox Pure Unleashed, it has a link where you can download them. So let me just show you that. If you go to this area where it says 3D Voodoo emulation, and then you click on this link here, it'll take you to where the driver downloads are. And you download not the NT drivers, you want the Windows 90X drivers. You download these drivers. And that's about it for what's really needed to install this. So now let's start. Okay, so let's start the installation now. I'll load up DOSBox Pure and I'll navigate to where my Windows 98 installation media is. And I'll drag the floppy boot disk image into DOSBox Pure, and I'll also drag the CD ISO image. And when I'm asked to this option here for the ISO image, I'll mount as CD disk image. Now you can see up here that I have the floppy disk image mounted and the CD-ROM ISO mounted. The next step is to select boot and install new operating system. So I'll select that. Now I'm giving the option to choose the size of the hard disk I want to use. I'm just going to use a 2 GB hard disk. You can use a different size if you want. Actually, let me use a 4 GB hard disk image because I want to use FAT32. But you can use a different size if you want. I'll select it. And now it's creating the image. Seems like it's frozen, but it's not. It's just busy behind the scenes creating the CD image. And it's done. And it's now booting from the floppy disk. I'll select Start from Windows 98, Setup from CD-ROM. That's option 1. And the floppy disk is booting. Now it loaded the Windows 98 setup. But there are also bootable CD images of Windows 98. That means that you would not need a floppy disk image first to boot from that then will execute the CD-ROM setup. The booting is done directly from the CD-ROM. If you have one of those CD images, just drag the CD image onto the DOSBox Pure window and then select boot and install new operating system. Select your disk image. And then on the boot up screen, you want to boot from CD-ROM. And you want to select Start Windows 98 Setup from CD-ROM. The setup will begin. And from now on, the process is the same whether you use a floppy disk image to boot or a CD-ROM image to boot. Here, I'll just select Enter, Enter again, let it scan, select Exit. Now it's copying files needed for Windows setup, and the Windows setup has begun. I'll click Continue. Let me put this full screen. Click, I'll click Accept. Okay, now for your now you need to get the product key that's for your installation media. After you enter the product key, you're asked to select the directory. I'll just leave it as is. Click Next. For setup options, I'm just going to leave it as typical. You can select whatever you want, or you can go in later and change this. Enter whatever you want here. On the Windows components, I'm going to select the default also, which is install the most common components. Here, I'll leave everything as is. Select your location. I'm in the United States. And for startup disk, just hit next. It's going to ask you to create one. Just click cancel. Hit OK here. And then it's ready to start copying files. Now hit next. Now just sit back, relax right here, and just wait until you get prompted again. This is going to take not too long, depending on how fast your computer is. But I'll go grab a coffee and come back later. Now the copying of files is done, and I'm asked to restart the computer, so I'll hit OK. I'll hit restart now. It restarted, and now the Windows 98 setup is setting up hardware and finalizing its settings. Restart here. And the operating system is setting up hardware. Here, there was a note in the GitHub about the network card. Let's take a look at that. The operating system will detect an NE 2000 networking card which will not be able to connect to the real internet. To avoid slow boot times, make sure to configure it to use base address port set to 300. Let me do that. So it's 300. And base IRQ set to 10. So I'll change this to 10. Anything else? Okay, and that's it. So remember to do that on your setup. I'll click OK. And let plug and play do its thing, or as it used to be called, plug and pray. Set your date and time zone. Here in network password, you could just hit cancel or OK. You hit OK, it'll just go through. It's going to detect new hardware. It's detecting the monitor now. And Windows is installed and we have sound working. Let's look at the graphics chip information. It's an S3 Trio 32/64 PCI, 256 colors. Let's try True Color. That works. Let's try resolutions higher. And that works. So let me go back to 640 by 480, 256 colors. If I go to advanced, okay, let's see if the Voodoo was detected, the 3DFX Voodoo graphics. And it was. But as you were able to see in the display properties, there's no mention of Voodoo here. That's because it's only using the standard, the built-in Windows 98 drivers. What we want to do is install the drivers that the GitHub told us, like I told you in the beginning. So let me show you how to do that. Before we install the Voodoo graphics driver, let me show you a few things that the GitHub mentions about 3DFX Voodoo emulation. And these are the default settings. Well, it does say the core includes emulation of a 3DFX Voodoo PCI card. Compatible DOS games should work out the box. If running an installed operating system like Windows 95 or Windows 98, you can get the required driver from the site, which we already got. So we download the driver. So here are the default settings for the 3DFX Voodoo emulation and DOSBox Pure Unleashed. By default, a compatible 8 megabyte memory card with one texture mapping unit is emulated. It can be changed to an experimental 12 megabyte dual TMU card. A 4 megabyte card or support can be disabled entirely. So in the performance settings, by default, the core will use fast OpenGL hardware acceleration to render 3DFX graphics. This setting can be used to switch to software rendering with a more faithful emulation, but at much higher CPU costs. The last setting is 3DFX OpenGL scaling. Use this setting to increase the render resolution of the OpenGL rendering. Okay, now I'm going to install the Voodoo drivers. And to do that, I'm going to need to mount the zip file that I downloaded that was linked in the GitHub. Okay, to mount it, we can't mount it while Windows 98 is running. We need to shut down Windows 98. Let's do that now. I'll open DOSBox Pure again. And then here's the zip file with the driver. I'll drag that into DOSBox Pure. And then let's select Run Installed Operating System. We can see like the contents of the zip file in here. I'll run the operating system and then select Windows 98. Let me expand. Click OK. Now, if I go to my computer, I can see that the zip file was mounted in the D drive. So I'll click on it and we see the driver. So I'll run it. I'll zip it to another location. Click OK. And now let's go to my computer. Remember that location where I zipped it to. It's C drive, temp, 3DFX. That's where you're going to find the driver to install. Now, right click on my computer, click Properties, and then click on Device Manager. Expand the Sound, Video, and Game Controller section. Right click on 3DFX Voodoo, click Properties, then click Drivers. Let's update the driver by clicking the Update Driver button. Here, click Next. Let's search for a better driver. Uncheck floppy disk and then check specify location. Then click Browse, cancel there, and then browse to the location where we extracted the driver, which is the C drive, temp directory, and 3DFX. Click OK. Next, and the driver will install. Let's not keep this driver and just install the driver that the GitHub told us to install. Now click Next. Okay, so make sure this is selected. It appears here. Then click Next and Next again. This I'll keep. I'll say yes because the Microsoft C runtime library is newer, the one that's already installed. And click Finish. Click Yes to restart. Okay, here. So now if we go to the display properties, we can see now 3DFX Voodoo graphics tab, which wasn't there before. We have some more options here. So this is one of the reasons why I like installing the driver that's on the GitHub. So now let's test this. Let's test this by installing a game. I'm going to install Quake 2. And for Quake 2, I have a CD image. Fortunately, for CD images, you don't have to shut down Windows 98 in order to mount them. So I can just drag this Quake 2 CD image, and then the DOSBox Pure GUI comes up, and I'll select Mount as CD disk image. Should be mounted. So now if I go to my computer, okay, it's not mounted. So if you haven't mounted a CD image first before booting, then you still need to shut down. Let me just show you that. So I'll mount the Quake 2 image just by dragging it into DOSBox GUI. Then I'll run the operating system. And now the CD-ROM is mounted. But let me show you that I can swap without restarting. So I'll load another disk image that I have. If I drag this Need for Speed disk image, I'm asked to mount. Let me escape. And if I refresh this, I have the Need for Speed ISO. So if you want to use CD-ROMs and you want to swap out without restarting, you first have to make sure that there's a CD-ROM disk image mounted before you boot Windows 98. After you boot Windows 98 with a mounted CD-ROM image, then you can swap without restarting Windows 98. Okay, so now let me mount Quake 2 again. I'll select Mount as CD disk image, close the menu, and it automatically refreshes. So now let's install Quake. Quake 2, not Quake. The installation is done. I'll click Finish. And now I'll run the game. Now, this is just running through software rendering. I'll switch to accelerated 3DFX rendering shortly. Right now, I forgot how to enable mouse look. But I'm just demonstrating that things are working. Now let's switch to 3DFX rendering, OpenGL 3DFX. And here we go. We get higher resolutions, better graphics, smooth frame rate, even though I did see a little bit of slowdown, but still works great. Yeah. Like I said before, I don't have mouse look enabled. Does it have mouse look? I forgot if Quake has mouse look on the options, or do I have to go through a console command? Free look. Oh, yeah. There we go. There you go. Anyway, that's it. That's how you install Windows 98 in Pure DOS. I hope this guide helps you. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you next time.